Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is easily the early heavyweight for 2026. It's the movie everyone has already penciled in as the one to beat before the year has really even gotten started. Nolan is coming off Oppenheimer, of course, tackling one of the most famous stories ever told on an epic scale with a stacked cast and full IMAX backing, and that makes this feel like a guaranteed winner.
World will remember this day.
But here's the part that's getting overlooked. There are at least 3 movies on the 2026 calendar that have a real shot at beating it. I'm talking box office dominance, cultural impact, awards potential, and I want to go through them with you now because 2026 movie slate is loaded with the likes of Disclosure Day, Dune Part 3, and Werewolf.
No one could stand between my men.
And before this turns into a Nolan defense or a backlash argument, I love Christopher Nolan, by the way. Let's set the rules clearly. This isn't opinion-based hype. These picks aren't about personal taste or online buzz. They're based strictly on release timing, franchise or brand power, director track record, and current momentum. Because I want to show you why The Odyssey isn't walking into an uncontested year the way that a lot of people seem to think that it's going to. Let's start with the first challenger because it arrives closest to The Odyssey and immediately creates a heavyweight clash. Disclosure Day has one massive advantage over Nolan's film right out of the gate: Steven Spielberg. Anytime Spielberg releases a movie these days, it is an event, but Disclosure Day isn't just another late-career Spielberg project because it marks his return to horror-tinged science fiction and alien storytelling, the exact genre space where he once defined modern cinema. Now that matters because Spielberg returning to the arena brings with it decades of goodwill, nostalgia without leaning into nostalgia, and built-on audience that spans generations. A Disclosure Day also benefits from all the mystery around it. Very little is known about its plot, its alien threat, or where it's ultimately headed. And that intrigue is very much intentional, and it's very much powerful. While The Odyssey wears its epic ambition very much openly, Disclosure Day keeps its cards very close to the chest, which fuels conversation speculation in an entirely different way. Emily Blunt leading the film only strengthens its position. She's become one of the most reliable performers in modern sci-fi in all of Hollywood, and her presence signals that this isn't just spectacle, it's actually going to be a character-driven film. Where Nolan's movie is risky in its scale and reverence for a classic text, Disclosure Day, on the other hand, is a little safer in its accessibility. Spielberg knows how to pull audiences in emotionally even when the story is strange or unsettling. And that emotional entry point gives Disclosure Day a real chance to connect with broader audiences in a way that The Odyssey may not. And culturally, that has to be worth something, right? Nolan's films are admired, analyzed, and strongly debated. Spielberg's best films are felt. If Disclosure Day lands, it doesn't really only compete with The Odyssey, it actually counter-programs it, offering suspense, fear, and wonder instead of mythicism. So that contract alone gives a legitimate shot at defining the year alongside or even above Nolan's epic. Now next up is the movie that might be the most dangerous competitor of them all because it arrives with momentum instead of mystery, and that is Dune Part 3. It has one overwhelming advantage over The Odyssey. It's the conclusion to a journey audiences are already emotionally invested in. Denis Villeneuve has delivered 2 exceptional Dune films to date, each one expanding the audience and raising the bar. The first built the world, the second deepened the politics and the characters and the emotional weight, and the third has the opportunity to cement the trilogy as one of the great cinematic achievements of its era. Yes, Dune Part 3 is a risk. It adopts Dune Messiah, which is a lot darker and more introspective than what you're typically used to in a traditional blockbuster, but that's exactly where Villeneuve thrives. His strength has always been restraint, atmosphere, and moral complexity. So where The Odyssey tells a legendary story that everyone already knows, Dune Part 3 delivers consequences. It explores what happens after destiny is fulfilled, after power is seized, after the hero actually wins. So there's also the larger context that can't be ignored as a result. Villeneuve and Nolan have been quietly competing for the title of defining sci-fi director of the 21st century for years now. While The Odyssey moves Nolan into mythological territory, Dune Part 3 keeps Villeneuve firmly in science fiction, potentially completing a trilogy that redefines the genre for an entire generation. So if Villeneuve sticks the landing, well, that accomplishment alone will dominate awards and critical conversations. Where Nolan's film is a standalone prestige swing, Dune Part 3 benefits from continuity, loyalty, and emotional investment from the audience. And they're not deciding whether to show up, they're already in. That built-in audience gives Dune a massive advantage, especially in December when awards buzz and repeat viewings start to matter most. And then there's the wild card. The movie that doesn't look like it belongs in the same conversation at first, but it absolutely does. Werewolf has one key advantage over the Odyssey that no one else on this list has. Robert Eggers operating at the peak of his powers. He spent over a decade refining one of the most distinctive voices in modern cinema. The Witch, The Northman, Nosferatu. They're not just good films, they were statements of intent. Now, Werewolf continues that trajectory. It's set in 13th century England, written in Middle English, and completely uninterested in mass market compromise. So that, on the surface, sounds like a disadvantage, but it's actually where its strength lies. Eggers has built trust with critics and cinephiles, and he's proved that he can translate his style into something that's accessible and artistically uncompromising. Aaron Taylor-Johnson leading a cast that includes Lily Rose Depp and Willem Dafoe gives Werewolf serious acting credibility, and Eggers' name alone ensures it will be taken seriously as a prestige contender. Now, where the Odyssey aims for scale, Werewolf aims for immersion. It's not trying to be the biggest movie of the year. It's actually trying to be the most unforgettable. And that's why it's dangerous. Awards bodies love bold, singular vision when it's executed well. So if Werewolf is able to hit, well then it could dominate critics' lists and prestige conversations, quietly outshining louder, more expensive films. And speaking of that, there are two more movies that need to at least be mentioned here, because even if they don't quite fit the core list, they're impossible to ignore. Avengers Doomsday and Spider-Man Brand New Day. They sit just outside the main countdown, not because they lack power, but because they kind of operate under slightly different expectations. These aren't challenger brands trying to prove themselves. They are proven juggernauts that could absolutely disrupt the conversation if things break the right way. Avengers Doomsday is the obvious one. It may be the most anticipated film of the year. Any Avengers film immediately enters the discussion by default because the name alone guarantees massive opening weekend numbers and global attention and all these months of speculation leading up to release. I mean, just look at all the videos we've been doing about Avengers Doomsday here on ScreenRant. You should go check those out, by the way. What makes Doomsday tricky is that it's arriving in a transitional phase for Marvel. Post-Secret Wars, the MCU is expected to look very different, and that uncertainty can cut both ways. On one hand, it creates some hesitation, and on the other, it creates curiosity. So if Doomsday represents the beginning of a true tonal reset, a new era rather than continuation, well, it could capture the cultural moment in a way that recent Marvel releases haven't. Where the Odyssey, as we've discussed, is very prestige-forward, Doomsday is pure scale and spectacle. So if Marvel finds its footing again here, it could overwhelm everything else on the calendar simply through sheer audience reach. And then when you're talking about Brand New Day, it's a different kind of threat because Spider-Man films don't just perform well, they transcend typical box office patterns. They play across demographics in a way that very few movies and franchises actually can. Brand New Day also carries a lot of narrative intrigue. After the emotional reset of No Way Home, audiences are deeply invested in seeing what Peter Parker looks like when he's truly alone again. So that personal angle gives this movie something that Nolan's film doesn't have, a direct, emotional continuation that fans feel some degree of ownership over. If Brand New Day delivers a more grounded, character-driven story with blockbuster energy, it could quietly become the movie that a lot of people talk about the most, not because it's the biggest, but because it's the most relatable. So the reason these two remain honorable mentions rather than top contenders is simple. Their ceilings, they're enormous, but so are the expectations, and anything short of exceptional will be judged harshly. Still, if either of them fires on all cylinders, they don't just compete with the Odyssey, they may bulldoze the entire conversation. Which of those are you most looking forward to, by the way? Let me know in the comments below. This is the part where things need to be reframed. I want to make this very clear. None of this means that the Odyssey is going to fail. Nolan's track record alone makes that unlikely. This isn't about tearing down his films. It's about just acknowledging reality. 2026 is not a weak year waiting for Nolan to arrive and claim the crown. It's a stacked battlefield filled with directors at the height of their powers. The Odyssey isn't the guaranteed winner people are assuming it is. It's just the prestige wildcard, the film that everyone expects to love, but not necessarily the one that will dominate every conversation. Disclosure Day has emotional accessibility in Spielberg's legacy. Dune Part 3 has the momentum and the narrative payoff. Werewolf has artistic daring and critical credibility. So each one challenges Nolan from a very different angle. And that's what makes this year so compelling. If even one of these movies truly hits, then the Odyssey won't be the automatic number one everyone expects. It will be part of a larger, fiercer conversation about what defines cinema in 2026. And that's a really good thing. Go to the theaters. Enjoy these films, because the real story isn't whether Nolan delivers another great film. We know he's going to. The real story is whether in a year this stacked, any single movie can actually stand above the rest. And if you want to know which of these contenders has the best chance of pulling it off, that's a conversation worth coming back for.